The space around Earth buzzed with activity. Ships of all sizes moved in perfect order. This was the day humanity would finally fight back. For 6 years, the aliens known as Zaxxons had hurt human colonies, stolen ships, and taken people. Today, that would end. Admiral William Carter stood tall on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant. His gray eyes focused on the big screen showing hundreds of human ships. Each one was ready for battle. Each one carried weapons made just for this fight. "Admiral, all ships report ready status," said Lieutenant Samantha Boyd. Her voice was calm, but Carter saw the fire in her eyes. She had lost family when the Zaxxons attacked New Mars colony. Carter nodded and looked at the fleet numbers again. 217 warships, the biggest force humans had ever put together in space. From small, fast corvettes to the massive dreadnought U.S. Intrepid with its city-sized hull. All in one place, all with one goal. "The Zaxxons think we are weak," Carter said to the bridge crew. "They've only fought our border guards and colony defenders. They've never faced Earth's main fleet." The room was quiet. Everyone knew what was at stake. If they failed, Earth itself might be next. "Sir, the wormhole stabilizer is at full power," reported Officer Ryan Jones from his station. "Jump coordinates locked on Proxima Centauri sector." Carter walked to the main viewing window. The stars looked peaceful from here. Soon they would see very different stars, and those stars would witness the might of human warfare. "Officer Martinez, open fleet-wide channel," he ordered. Olivia Martinez, the communications officer, pressed some buttons on her screen. "Channel open, sir. All ships are listening." Carter took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Carter. For too long, we have watched the Zaxxons hurt our people. They refuse to talk. They think we are not worth talking to. Today, we will show them how wrong they are." On every ship in the fleet, men and women listened. Pilots like John Harris checked their fighter controls one last time. Marine squad leaders like Sergeant George Wilson made sure their weapons were ready. Engineers like Susan Lee watched power levels carefully. "Operation Thunderstrike begins now," Carter continued. "We will jump directly into Zaxxon space. We will hit them hard and fast. We will free our people and end this war." The first ships began to move toward the massive ring structure that would open the way to enemy space. The wormhole stabilizer was humanity's greatest invention. It could tear a hole through space itself and keep it open long enough for the entire fleet to pass through. "First wave, you may jump when ready," Carter ordered. On the screen, the first ships, 50 small corvettes, approached the ring. Blue energy sparked and swirled until a huge circle of twisting light appeared. One by one, the corvettes vanished into it. "Second wave, prepare to jump," came the order. Aboard his destroyer, Captain Alan Green watched his crew work with smooth efficiency. "Weapons hot, shields at maximum," he reported back to the flagship. The destroyers entered the swirling light next, followed by the cruisers. In the fighter bay of the carrier U.S. Defiant, Patricia Winters climbed into her fighter. "For Earth," she whispered as she sealed her cockpit. At last, only the capital ships remained, the massive dreadnoughts and the flagship Valiant itself. "Final wave, prepare to jump," Carter said. He could feel his heart beating fast. Once they crossed over, there was no turning back. "Sir, all previous waves report successful transit," Martinez said. "They're holding position on the other side. No Zaxxon response yet. They don't know we're coming." Carter smiled grimly. "Perfect. Helm, take us through." The U.S. Valiant moved forward, its enormous engines glowing bright blue. The ship entered the wormhole, and the stars around them bent and twisted. The greatest battle in human history was about to begin. The stars returned to normal as the U.S. Valiant emerged from the wormhole. Admiral Carter blinked twice as his eyes adjusted to the view. They had arrived at the exact spot they wanted, behind the main Zaxxon fleet. "All ships accounted for, sir," Lieutenant Boyd reported. "No losses during transit." Carter nodded and looked at the tactical screen. The Zaxxon ships were still facing away from them, their attention fixed on blockading the human colony on Proxima Centauri B. The insect-like aliens had no idea that 217 human warships had just appeared behind them. "Target their command vessels," Carter ordered. "Prepare to activate psionic jammers on my mark." The Zaxxons rely on a hive mind to coordinate their actions. Each ship was like a body part, moving with perfect unity. This was their greatest strength, but humans had found a way to turn it into a weakness. "Enemy still shows no sign of detecting us," said Officer Jones. "Their sensor arrays are focused on the planet." Carter looked at the clock. They had been in enemy space for 30 seconds now. Soon, the Zaxxons would notice them. He pressed a button on his chair. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Weapons free. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Begin now." Across the human fleet, pilots jumped into their fighters. Launch bays opened. Weapons systems powered up. On the destroyer U.S. Swift, Captain Alan Green gave the order to fire the first shots of the battle. "Quantum disruptors at full charge," his weapons officer said. "Firing now." Beams of blue-white energy shot from the human ships. They hit the Zaxxon vessels before any alarms could sound. The special weapons passed right through the alien shields like they weren't even there. "First hits confirmed," Boyd said, her voice rising with excitement. 23 enemy ships disabled with the first volley. Now the Zaxxons began to react. Their ships turned clumsily, confused by the sudden attack from an impossible direction. No enemy could reach this deep into their territory, and yet here was a human fleet, larger than any they had seen before. "Now, activate the jammers," Carter ordered. Officer Martinez pressed a series of buttons. Psionic jammers active across all frequencies. The effect was immediate. On the screen, the Zaxxon ships suddenly lost their perfect formation. Some crashed into each other. Others fired weapons in random directions. Without their hive mind, each ship had to work alone, and they didn't know how. "Launch all fighters," Carter said. "Target their engines and weapons first." From the carriers, hundreds of human fighters flew out. They were small and fast, hard for the confused Zaxxons to hit. Pilot John Harris led the first wing, diving toward a Zaxxon cruiser. "Fox 3, he called as he fired his missiles. They struck true, blowing holes in the alien ship's hull. Across the battlefield, the human Armada moved with practiced skill. Each captain knew their role. Each ship supported the others. They had trained for this moment for years. "Sir, the Zaxxons are trying to call for help," Martins reported. "Should we jam their long-range signals too?" Carter thought for a moment. "No, let them call. Let them tell their leaders what's happening here." On the main Zaxxon command ship, the Hive commander clicked its mandibles in fear. These were not the weak humans they had fought before. This was something new. Something terrible. "Send in the boarding teams," Carter ordered. "I want those prisoners freed." Marine dropships flew toward the larger Zaxxon vessels. Inside one, Sergeant George Wilson checked his rifle one last time. "Remember," he told his squad, "shoot the big ones first. They're the sub-commanders." The dropship attached to the hull of a Zaxxon prison transport. Cutting tools burned through the alien metal. In moments, the Marines would be inside. Just 90 seconds had passed since the human fleet arrived. Already, the battle was nearly over. Sergeant George Wilson was the first through the hole into the Zaxxon prison ship. The air inside smelled strange, like rotten eggs and burnt metal. His helmet filters cleaned it enough to breathe. Behind him, 12 Marines moved in perfect order, weapons ready. "Clear left," called Private Linda Evans as she checked a side passage. "Clear right," added Corporal Steve Mills. The inside of the Zaxxon ship looked like a beehive. The walls were made of a yellow-brown material that felt both hard and slightly soft. The lights gave everything an orange glow. "Life signs ahead," said Medic Paul Grant, looking at his scanner. "Human life signs. Lots of them." Wilson nodded and waved his team forward. They moved carefully down the main passage. 2 Zaxxon guards appear ahead. They were 7 feet tall with 4 arms and hard outer shells. Their eyes were large and black. They raised their weapons, but the Marines were faster. Wilson and Evans fired at the same time. The aliens fell without making a sound. "Command, this is Rescue Team 6, Wilson said into his radio. "We have found the prisoner section. Moving to secure now." On the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, Admiral Carter received the message with a grim smile. The rescue teams were making good progress on all fronts. "Sir, enemy resistance is collapsing across the field," reported Lieutenant Boyd. "Their command structure is completely broken." The tactical display showed the battle clearly. More than half the Zaxxon ships were already disabled or destroyed. The rest were fighting alone, with no plan. Human fighters moved between them like angry bees, striking and moving on. "What about the planet?" Carter asked. Officer Jones checked his screens. "Ground forces report the Zaxxon bases are in chaos. Our troops are moving in now." Carter nodded. This was going even better than they had hoped. The new weapons and tactics were working perfectly. Back on the prison ship, Wilson's team reached a large door. It was locked with some kind of alien technology. "Can we get through?" Wilson asked. Private Joe Adams stepped forward with a special tool. "Yes, sir. This will override their systems." He placed the device on the door. It lit up with blue lights, and seconds later, the door slid open. Inside were hundreds of humans in small cells. Men, women, and even some children who had been taken from the colonies. They looked thin and tired, but their eyes lit up with hope when they saw the Marine uniforms. "USA Marines," Wilson called out. "We're here to take you home." The prisoners began to cheer and cry. Some reached through their cell bars, trying to touch the Marines to make sure they were real. "Get these cells open," Wilson ordered. "Medic Grant, check their condition." As his team worked, Wilson's radio buzzed again. "All rescue teams, this is Admiral Carter. The main Zaxxon fleet has surrendered. I repeat, they have surrendered. Complete your missions and prepare for extraction." Wilson couldn't believe it. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes from start to finish. The mighty Zaxxon Empire, which had terrorized human space for 6 years, had been defeated in the time it took to drink a cup of coffee. On the U.S. Valiant, Carter looked at the final battle data. 14 human fighters lost. 1 small corvette damaged beyond repair. 23 Marines injured, but none killed. In return, they had destroyed 60 Zaxxon ships and captured over 100 more. The rest had surrendered. "Sir," said Communications Officer Martinez, "we're getting signals from the Zaxxon homeworld. They want to talk." Carter raised his eyebrows in surprise. "They want to talk. Now they want to talk." "Yes, sir," Martinez confirmed. "They're requesting terms for peace." Carter looked around the bridge. His officers were smiling now. After 6 long years, the war was ending, and humanity had won. "Tell them," Carter said slowly, "that we accept their surrender, and that we'll meet to discuss terms." Outside the viewports of the Valiant, the last fires of battle were dying away. A new chapter in human history had begun. 2 days after the battle, Admiral Carter stood in a large room on the neutral space station Omega. Across from him sat 3 Zaxxon leaders. Their hard shells gleamed under the bright lights. Their 4 arms rested on the table. Their black eyes watched Carter closely. "These terms are harsh," said the lead Zaxxon. Its voice came through a translator as flat and emotionless. Carter did not smile. "They are fair. You attacked us without warning. You took our people. You refused to talk. Now you will pay the price." The Zaxxons clicked their mouth parts, a sign of discomfort. They were not used to being on the losing side. For hundreds of years, they had been the strongest power in this part of space, until now. "We will leave all human space," the Zaxxon agreed. "We will return all prisoners. We will pay for the damage we caused." And you will open your borders to trade, Carter added. No more secrets. No more hiding. Back on the U.S. Valiant, Lieutenant Boyd was helping the freed prisoners. Many were sick or hurt after their time with the Zaxxons. Some told stories that made even the tough Marines feel sick. They were studying us, said one man, his eyes hollow from bad memories. They wanted to know how we think, how we feel pain, how we fight. Boyd gave him a cup of hot tea. You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore. In the medical bay, Dr. Aaron Lee worked to save a young girl's arm. The Zaxxons had done something to it, trying to see how human bones grew back. Nurse Debbie Clark helped him, her face sad but determined. Will she be okay? Clark asked quietly. Lee nodded. Yes, our new medicine can fix this. She'll use this arm again. In another part of the ship, Captain Jack Ford was studying the Zaxxon technology they had captured. It was strange and complex, a mix of organic and mechanical parts. This is how they communicate with their hive mind, he told his science team. We can learn a lot from this. Officer Susan Lee pointed to another device. And this seems to be their faster-than-light drive. It works differently than ours. Ford smiled. With this knowledge, we can make our ships even better. On the planet below, Major Frank Collins walked through a former Zaxxon base. His soldiers had already secured it and found more human prisoners. Now they were learning about Zaxxon ground tactics and weapons. They never expected to fight on the ground. Collins said to his second-in-command. They thought their fleet would protect them forever. Lieutenant Dean Warren nodded. Their soldiers are strong but slow, and they don't know how to fight alone. Back on Earth, the news of the victory was spreading. People celebrated in streets and homes. For 6 years, they had lived in fear. Now that fear was gone. In the White House, President Eleanor Wright watched the reports coming in. Her advisors sat around her, faces happy with relief. We should thank Admiral Carter, said Defense Secretary Alan Brown. His plan worked perfectly. Wright nodded. Yes, but we should also prepare for what comes next. The Zaxxons are just one alien race. There are others out there. At the peace talks, the Zaxxon leader signed the agreement with a special ink that came from its own body. Carter used a simple pen. Both signatures meant the same thing. The war was over. You fought well, the Zaxxon said, surprising Carter. We did not think humans could be so effective. Carter stood up straight. There's a lot you don't know about humans. We hope you never have to learn it the hard way again. As he walked back to his shuttle, Carter thought about the future. Humanity had faced its first real test against an alien power. They had not just survived, they had won decisively. The stars were a little less scary now. And if other alien races were watching, they had just learned an important lesson. Don't underestimate humans. 1 month after the great victory, Admiral Carter stood at the window of his office on Earth. He could see the blue sky and white clouds. After months in space, it felt good to be home. On his desk sat many reports about the battle and what came after. A knock came at his door. Come in, he called. Lieutenant Samantha Boyd entered, carrying more papers. The final numbers, sir, she said. Carter nodded and took the report. All 217 ships of the human fleet had returned home. Only one, the corvette U.S. Hawk, was damaged too badly to fix. 14 pilots had died in the battle. 23 Marines had been hurt, but all had now recovered. In return, they had ended a war and saved thousands of lives. Good work, Boyd, Carter said. This will help with the medal ceremony next week. Boyd smiled. Thank you, sir. Will you be giving a speech? Carter made a face. He didn't like giving speeches. He was a soldier, not a politician. But he knew this was part of his job too. Yes, I'll say a few words, he agreed. Nothing too long. Miles away, in a special hospital, the rescued prisoners were still healing. Some had physical wounds that would take time to get better. Others had mental scars that might never fully heal. But they were alive and free, and that was what mattered most. Dr. Aaron Lee walked through the hospital rooms, checking on his patients. He stopped to talk with a young boy named Kyle, who had been taken from a colony ship 2 years ago. "How are you feeling today?" Lee asked kindly. Kyle looked up from the model ship he was building. It was the U.S. Valiant, the ship that had led the rescue. "Better," he said. "The bad dreams didn't come last night." Lee patted his shoulder. "That's great progress. You're very brave, you know." In another part of the same building, scientists studied the Zaxxon technology they had captured. They had already learned how to make their ships faster and their weapons stronger. But the most valuable thing they found was information about other alien races. The Zaxxons knew about 12 other intelligent species, said Chief Scientist Olivia Martinez to her team. "Some are friendly. Some are not. We need to prepare for both kinds." Her assistant, Ben Cooper, pointed to a star map. "This race here, the Varlians, seem especially interesting. They have technology we've never seen before." Martinez nodded. "We should try to contact them soon. Maybe they can be allies." On the edge of human space, Captain Jack Ford commanded a patrol of 5 ships. They watched the border with Zaxxon territory, making sure the peace agreement was being followed. So far, the Zaxxons had kept their word. "Anything on scanners?" Ford asked his crew. "Nothing unusual, sir," replied Sensor Officer Alice Long. "All quiet." Ford nodded. He hadn't expected trouble. The Zaxxons had learned their lesson. They wouldn't risk another fight with humans anytime soon. Back on Earth, factories worked day and night to build more ships. The victory had shown that humans could win in space, but it had also shown that the galaxy was a dangerous place. They needed to be ready for whatever came next. At a special school, pilot John Harris taught new recruits how to fly the latest fighters. They watched with wide eyes as he showed them the recordings from the Great Battle. "It was over so fast," one student said in wonder. Harris nodded seriously. "That's the human way of war. We don't fight fair. We fight to win." In the White House, President Wright met with leaders from other nations. The battle had united Earth in a way nothing else could. Old enemies were now working together, sharing resources and knowledge. "The Zaxxon threat is over," Wright told them, "but we must stay united. Together, we can face any challenge the stars throw at us." As night fell over Earth, Admiral Carter finally left his office. Tomorrow would bring new tasks, new challenges. But for now, he could rest, knowing that humanity's future among the stars was a little more secure. 6 months after the Great Battle, the first human ship entered Zaxxon space as a friend, not an enemy. The U.S. Discovery was a science vessel, not a warship. Its mission was to learn, not to fight. Captain Hither Adams stood on the bridge as they approached the Zaxxon homeworld. It was a large planet with 3 moons. From space, it looked like a giant yellow-brown ball. "All systems normal," reported First Officer Jason Young. "The Zaxxons have cleared us for landing at their main port." Adams nodded. This visit was part of the peace agreement. Humans would share some technology, and the Zaxxons would share theirs. Both sides would benefit. "Remember," Adams told her crew, "we are guests here. Be polite but careful. We still don't fully understand their culture." The ship landed smoothly on a flat area near a huge Zaxxon city. Outside the windows, hundreds of the insect-like aliens watched with their black eyes. Some were workers, smaller and faster. Some were soldiers, larger and stronger. And a few were leaders, with special marks on their shells. Adams and her team put on light-breathing masks. The air on this world wouldn't kill humans, but it would make them sick without protection. They walked down the ramp to meet their hosts. The head Zaxxon stepped forward. Its translator device spoke in a flat voice. "Welcome to Zax Prime. We are honored by your visit." Adams bowed slightly. "Thank you for having us. We look forward to learning about your world." Meanwhile, on a planet far from both human and Zaxxon space, another meeting was taking place. Admiral Carter sat across from a Varlian ambassador. The Varlians looked almost like humans, but their skin was light blue and they had no hair. "We watched your battle with the Zaxxons," the Varlian said. "Most impressive." Carter kept his face neutral. "You knew about the Zaxxons attacking us." "For 6 years." The Varlian made a gesture with its 6-fingered hand. "We do not interfere in such matters. But now we see humans are strong, worth knowing better." Carter didn't like this answer, but he kept his thoughts to himself. The Varlians had advanced technology that humans needed. Getting angry wouldn't help. "We hope this is the start of a good friendship," Carter said carefully. Back on Earth, the medal ceremony was finally happening. In a large room, President Wright pinned medals on the heroes of the battle. First came the families of the 14 pilots who had died. Their medals were given with special honor. "Your loved ones saved humanity," Wright told them. "We will never forget them." Next came the injured Marines who had now recovered. Sergeant George Wilson walked with a small limp from his wound, but his face was proud as he received his medal. Then came the ship captains and officers who had led the fleet. Captain Jack Ford, Lieutenant Samantha Boyd, and many others stood tall as their names were called. Last came Admiral Carter, who had planned and led the whole battle. The room erupted in cheers as he stepped forward. After the ceremony, Carter met with some of the freed prisoners. They looked healthier now, though some still showed signs of their hard time with the Zaxxons. "You saved us," said a woman named Karen Hill. "My daughter and I had been prisoners for 3 years. We thought we would die there." Carter shook her hand gently. "I'm just glad we found you in time." On the Zaxxon homeworld, Captain Adams and her team toured a Zaxxon science center. The aliens showed them strange and wonderful technologies. "This can heal injuries very fast," explained the Zaxxon scientist, showing them a glowing green device. Officer Eric Nelson made careful notes. "This could help a lot of people back home." As the day ended, Adams sent a message back to Earth. The first contact was going well. The Zaxxons seemed truly sorry for the war and wanted peace. This was a good start to a new chapter in space. Back in his office, Carter read the report with a small smile. Everything was going according to plan. Humanity was moving forward, stronger than before. 1 year after the battle, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of a new ship, the U.S. Unity. It was bigger and more powerful than any human ship before it. Built with new technology, some from Earth and some learned from the Zaxxons, it was a symbol of how far humanity had come. "All systems ready for the jump, sir," said Commander Samantha Boyd, now promoted from lieutenant. She had been with Carter since the beginning, and he trusted her completely. "Thank you, Commander," Carter replied. "Signal the fleet to prepare." Outside the viewports, 20 ships waited. It was a small fleet compared to the one that had fought the Zaxxons, but these ships were much more advanced. They were about to make the longest space jump ever tried by humans. "Destination locked in," reported Navigation Officer Henry Kim. "The Varlian home system, just as they invited us." Carter nodded. This visit was important. The Varlians had watched humans defeat the Zaxxons, and now they wanted an alliance. As much as Carter didn't fully trust them, Earth's leaders had decided to accept the invitation. "Start the jump sequence," Carter ordered. The wormhole opened ahead of them, bigger and more stable than the one they had used a year ago. The fleet moved forward, entering the swirling blue light. At the same time, on the Zaxxon homeworld, Captain Heather Adams was finishing her 6-month mission. She and her team had learned much about Zaxxon society and shared much about human culture. "We thank you for your visit," said the Zaxxon High Leader, its voice translated into flat English. "Our people have learned that humans are not just warriors but thinkers and creators too." Adams smiled behind her breathing mask. "And we have learned that the Zaxxons are not just warriors either. We have more in common than we thought." The Zaxxon made a gesture of respect with its 4 arms. "When your people defeated us so quickly, we feared you would destroy our empire. Instead, you offered peace. We will not forget this." On Earth, in the newly built Space Academy, John Harris taught the next generation of pilots. The class today was about the battle that had changed everything. The most important lesson, Harris told the young students, was not about our weapons or our ships. It was about being unpredictable. The Zaxxons never imagined we could appear behind them. They never prepared for it. A young cadet raised her hand. "Sir, could we do the same trick again if we had to fight someone else?" Harris shook his head. "No. Everyone knows about the wormhole jump now. But that's okay. We'll find new ways to surprise them. That's what humans do best." In a research center in Australia, Dr. Aaron Lee and his team worked with some of the Zaxxon medical technology. They had already used it to help the former prisoners heal faster. Now they were finding ways to improve it even more. This could change everything, Lee told his assistant nurse Debbie Clark as they watched a broken bone heal in minutes under the green light of the Zaxxon device. "No one will have to suffer with injuries for long." Clark nodded. "And the mental healing techniques we learned from them are helping with trauma too. The nightmares are less frequent for the former prisoners now." Back in space, Admiral Carter's fleet emerged from the wormhole near the Varlian homeworld. It was a beautiful planet, mostly blue oceans with green and purple land. 6 moons orbited it, each holding a Varlian city. "We're being hailed," reported Communications Officer Greg Patterson. "The Varlians welcome us and are sending docking instructions." Carter took a deep breath. This was a big moment for humanity. Another step into a larger galaxy filled with strange and wonderful beings. Some would be friends. Some might be enemies. But after the Zaxxon War, humans were ready for anything. "Reply with our thanks," Carter said. "And let them know we look forward to meeting them face to face." As the fleet moved toward the planet, Carter thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. From fighting for survival to exploring the stars as equals with ancient alien races, the future looked bright for humanity. 5 years had passed since the Great Battle. On a special day, many important people gathered in orbit around Earth. They were there to see the launch of a new kind of ship, one that would change everything. Admiral William Carter, now with gray in his hair, stood at the main window of Space Station Freedom. Next to him was President Eleanor Wright, serving her second term. Behind them were leaders from Earth and representatives from 3 alien races, the Zaxxons, the Varlians, and the newly contacted Drenari. "It's beautiful," said Wright, looking at the ship floating in space before them. Carter nodded. "Yes, it is." The new ship was called the U.S. Explorer. It was not a warship. It had weapons for defense, but its main purpose was to travel far into unknown space. It would go farther than any human had ever gone before. "This ship has the best of all our technologies," Carter explained to the guests. "Human creativity, Zaxxon power systems, Varlian sensors, and Drenari shield design. It's truly a ship of cooperation." The Zaxxon representative clicked its mouthparts in what humans now knew was a sign of approval. 5 years ago, we were enemies. Now we build ships together. The universe is strange." The Varlian smiled with its too wide mouth. "When we saw humans defeat the Zaxxon fleet so quickly, we knew you were special. That is why we wanted to be your friends." Carter kept his thoughts to himself. He knew the Varlians had only reached out after seeing human power, but that was how the galaxy worked. Strength earned respect, and respect could, over time, turn into real friendship. Inside the new ship, Captain Samantha Boyd walked through the bridge. After serving with Carter for years, she had been chosen to command this historic mission. "All systems check out perfectly," reported First Officer Jack Ford. "We're ready when you are." Boyd nodded. "Thank you. The ceremony should be wrapping up soon. Then we can make history." Around the ship, her crew was busy with final preparations. Some were human. Some were Zaxxon. A few were Varlian. And 2 were Drenari, tall beings with 4 eyes and skin that changed color with their emotions. This mixed crew would journey together into the unknown. On Earth, in a small house by the ocean, John Harris watched the ceremony on his screen. His days as a fighter pilot were over. A training accident had injured his leg 2 years ago. Now he taught at the academy and wrote books about the battle that had changed humanity's place in the stars. His wife, Lisa Harris, sat beside him. She had been one of the prisoners rescued from the Saxons. They had met during her recovery, fallen in love, and now had a baby daughter named Hope. "Do you wish you were going with them?" Lisa asked, watching the new ship. Harris shook his head. "No, I had my adventure. Now it's their turn." Back at the space station, the ceremony was ending. Captain Boyd had returned and stood at attention as President Wright gave a short speech. 5 years ago, humanity faced its greatest challenge, Wright said. We not only survived, we thrived. We turned enemies into friends. We learned and grew. Now we take the next step into the stars, not alone, but with new allies beside us. She turned to Boyd. "Captain, your ship and crew are ready. You carry the hopes and dreams of not just Earth, but all our new friends. Make us proud." Boyd saluted sharply. "We will, Madam President." As Boyd prepared to return to her ship, Admiral Carter stopped her for a moment. "Remember what we learned from the Saxon War," he said quietly. "Being strong is important, but knowing when not to use that strength is even more important." Boyd nodded. "I understand, sir." Hours later, the U.S. Explorer moved away from Earth. Its new engines glowed blue, then white, then a color humans had no name for. A special wormhole opened before it, larger and more stable than any seen before. The ship moved forward, carrying humans and aliens together into the unknown parts of the galaxy. No one knew what they would find. But whatever waited out there, they would face it together. On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the ship disappear into the wormhole. He thought about how much had changed since that day when his fleet had jumped into Saxon space and won a war in less than a minute. That victory had shown the galaxy that humans were strong. What they did now would show that humans were wise too. And in the end, that would matter even more.